Hi, good morning, everyone. We'll just wait a few seconds just for everyone to join us this morning.
Hi, Lauren.
Hello, good morning.
Morning.
Nice grey morning here in London, so I hope there's some sunshine where everyone else is.
Yeah, typically British weather today.
It definitely is.
Very cheery, very
exactly.
positive.
Although we were just saying, weren't we, how it's nice that it's a little bit warmer than it was.
Yeah, I'll take that.
Right. Okay, we'll just give it a few more seconds and then I'll kick off introducing this session this morning. Right. Okay, well, hi everyone, and welcome to IAB Europe's Industry Insider with Integral Ad Science this morning. We're very delighted to have you all joining us live today. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Laura Wakefield. I'm the Marketing and Industry Programs Director at IAB Europe. And for those of you that don't know, Industry Insider is actually a webinar format that we launched last year to provide real learnings and insights from industry leading companies. We want to just be able to present the latest trends and best practices from across the industry. So far this year, we've included topics such as brand safety with Group M. We've looked at creator marketing with TikTok, and most recently, how to drive consumers back into store post-lockdown with S4M. But today, we're very excited to have IAS with us to discuss one of the hottest topics of the moment, CTV. They will dive into what at-home audiences look like and what the future holds for this emerging channel. So joining us today, we have Glenn Perera, Director of Product Strategy at IAS, and we also have a guest speaker joining us a little bit later on, Diana Romero, who is the Digital Standards and Partnerships Manager at PMX Global. But before I hand over to Glenn, who'll be leading this session today, just a couple of housekeeping points. So as you should be able to see on your interface, there is a Q&A box. So we do encourage you to add any questions that you have for Glenn or Diana in there, and we'll address as many as we can at the end of the session. As with all our events, this is live, so we do encourage you to post those questions, and we'll be recording it, so we'll make sure that we share a copy of this with you all afterwards. But with that, I will hand over to you, Glenn.
Okay, thanks for that. And thanks to everyone for joining us today. I'm excited to run you through a number of different insights on the topic of CTV during this webinar today. My name is Glenn Perera. I'm the Product Strategy Director for the European region. I'm based in London. Nice rainy grey London today. So in my role, I work with clients to understand the challenges right now and also the near future, which ultimately translates into longer term product roadmap and also innovation planning. I think it's safe to say that CTV has been top of mind for pretty much everyone lately. And it's no surprise with stay-at-home orders and lockdowns around the world that CTV streaming racked up an incredible level of audience growth this year, having quite the impact on linear TV's hope for a rebound. According to our Industry Pulse survey, 88% of those surveyed expected a shift in ad spend from linear to digital video and CTV to only accelerate in 2021. Plus, more advanced data and contextual targeting opportunities could help boost further investment, with 80% of the respondents agreeing that CTV provides far richer data. So during this session, we're going to go through the four following areas: the accelerated growth and adoption of CTV, followed by some insights regarding the ad experience evolution. We'll then move on to advances that we need to see in CTV and also the industry next steps and things you can do to impact your world today and also for the midterm and long term as well. And then we're going to wrap up with a Q&A with Diana Romero from PMX Global to hear from her on how Publicis is approaching CTV advertising as well. So before I get started, without going into too much jargon, let me clarify upfront some of the terminology we'll be using today and what I mean when we're discussing CTV and or OTT. And the fact that they're both often used interchangeably, and I'll be doing just that in this session as well. So whether your TV is directly connected to the internet, or if you're using a streaming device like a Roku or a Fire Stick, or even a games console like a PS5, if you've been lucky enough to score one of those, I haven't, but I digress. We'll be covering all these bases and methods as well. So let's take a look at the CTV growth over the past year and also the adoption. I'm sure everyone here who's joining us today has heard the terms either cord nevers or cord cutters, speaking of course about those who have either never had a linear TV package or have canceled their package in favor of streaming services. With a strong preference for CTV devices, it's no wonder that CTV household penetration began to overtake traditional TV, and due to COVID, it is expected to grow in eclipsing traditional TV easily. No surprises there, I'm sure you agree. That said, even with strong growth and continued growth, we still have some big challenges. Let me start with fragmentation. Unlike digital channels, TV advertising isn't standardized globally. In many cases, TV advertising is traditionally bought separately from the rest of a marketing plan. Buying across multiple channels can be challenging, as the level of data available for each will differ. Thinking next about costs, CTV CPMs can differ greatly versus traditional TV spots due to the targeting applied and the scarcity of the inventory. With the challenges of measurement, some advertisers believe that they are unlikely to see an improved return on investment. Others argue that the effective CPM of reaching specific target audiences is more effective than broad buying campaigns. There is greater likelihood that there is more than one person watching a screen at any one time in a non-skippable format, making it more appealing than other digital counterparts. Moving on to measurement, obviously one of my favorite topics. Despite the increases in adoption, subscriptions, and platform options, some advertisers have been slow to make the shift of making use of CTV inventory and devices. The primary reason for this hesitation seems to be anchored to the topic of measurement. Every new environment offers obstacles, and it takes time to create frameworks for standardization across industry players as well. Adding to this is the adoption of those standards across the board is also something that can take time. Last but not least on this list is control. Broadcasters may be concerned that they'll lose control of their pricing and scale if advertisers start cherry-picking delivery. As we know, TV content is very expensive to produce and requires a strong understanding of incoming revenue to fund it. So I think before we move on, we're going to do a quick poll and over to Lauren to launch the poll. In the meantime, I'm going to have a sip of water. So the question is your company ready to embrace advertising on CTV? Yes or no? Take a little time for people to get a chance to vote. Okay, I think that's that. I'm not sure if the poll answers are up yet. I can't see them on my screen. Okay, so 88%, okay, the responses are 88% are yes, ready to embrace. 12% are no, not ready to embrace. I'd be curious to know out of that 88%, how many of them believe that their company is actually ready from an infrastructure, buy, sell, measurement, et cetera, point of view. But that's, I'd say that's a question for another time. So thanks for taking part in the poll. I'm going to move on to the next slide. And good to know that 88% of you are, are ready to embrace it. So let's talk about the study that we did. It's a streaming war study. So as we know, the shift is urgently needed to address those challenges and to respond to the consumer shift in behaviors. As we all know, CTV adoption has skyrocketed in recent years, and it's taken a permanent bite of linear TV as consumers are drawn in by the ability to stream their favorite content by selectively subscribing to providers who meet their preferences and budget. But what happens when subscriptions start to add up? We asked consumers, around 500 of them, I believe, in the UK, about whether about their CTV usage and preferences when it comes to paying for subscription services. Our streaming war study conducted in December 2020 also explores consumer use and behaviors associated with ad-supported video content and how the experience could be improved. There's a link and or a QR code that's going to be coming up later in this deck at the end of this deck. So if you want to get a hold of this copy, you can do it that way. But in the meantime, allow me to share some insights with you. In the UK, connected TV has become almost universally adopted. Through this study, we confirmed this adoption accelerated trend we just spoke about, leading to 9 in 10 people watching streaming content on CTV. That's 9 in 10. That's basically everyone. That's huge. But what's most interesting about this growth isn't actual growth itself, but the fact that there is no projection for it to slow down in the slightest anytime soon. The overwhelming majority of UK consumers we have access to, that have access to a CTV device with integrated smart TVs being the preferred device for almost 2/3 in comparison to any external or OTT layer. Again, PS5, the PS5 that I don't have. With nearly 80% of consumers with some form of subscription service, Netflix, unsurprisingly, is leading the pack of premium streaming services. Being the preferred service for almost 63% of respondents, followed closely by Amazon Prime. Subscription promotions by new services like Disney Plus, launched last year, are already becoming popular and will eventually add weight to the consumers' budgets. While paid streaming services witnessing a diminishing growth, free streaming services are on the rise. 54% of consumers are already accessing free streaming services, and more than half of consumers plan to start watching free services in the next year, indicating that consumers are more willing to watch ads if it means no extra cost for content. In fact, when we asked consumers, are you willing to see ads to gain access to free video content, a massive 83% of viewers believe that seeing ads is a very fair trade to access free video content, further driving home the idea that there's room for more players, specifically AVOD players. We wanted to explore more into what motivates consumers to make that shift. Our research confirms some suspicions. The main driver for consumers watching ad-supported services stems from wanting to save a little cash. Who doesn't? I know I do. 61% of consumers say that they watch free streaming services to save money, while 30% say they already pay too much for other streaming services. Aside from saving money, content is a major driver in the free stream game. Consumers like the exclusive video content on certain services, and 32% say they like having a large pool of content to choose from, advertising being a driver in access to tons of content. And it turns out that a variety is also a key factor as well, with a third of people saying they like having a large pool of content to choose from, all of which only reinforces the staying power of CTV. For the love of God, who wants to go back to paying expensive cable packages? Again, not me. So it's encouraging to see that many are willing to watch ads on CTV. And 2021 really should be the year of CTV advertising, as it's such a great opportunity for advertisers. Now let's talk about the ad experience and the user as well. As folks continue to make the switch from linear to CTV, we were keen to find out what the preferences are when it comes to the ad experience. Let's start with the key differentiators and adjustments that users want to see. Some of the biggest ad adjustments users want to see is potentially a lack of ads, this being the driving factor for free services versus linear TV. The ability to skip certain ads is a top reason consumers prefer free services. 65% of consumers say that the shorter ads and shorter ad breaks make the ad experience better when compared to standard TV. Meanwhile, 50% of consumers say fewer ad breaks and fewer ads help to make free service better compared to linear. Another big one, and I think this is something that comes up far too often, is the need for fewer and repetitive ads. So that's fewer repetitive ads. This highlights that the users are affected by industry's current state in a noticeable way. We all know that on CTV, you might get served the same ad in every ad break, and sometimes multiple times within the same ad break, because frequency capping can be a challenge. But we know that some users want some kind of happy medium, because as we heard before, users are willing to watch ads, but there are clearly terms and conditions that apply. So excuse me. So viewer preference for contextually relevant ads extends to the CTV ad experience as well. While a majority of people will skip ads, when given a chance, relevance remains key for engagement. Almost half the respondents claim that the relevance of an ad is as important to their viewing experience. Around 1 in 5 UK consumers usually watch ads all the way through when streaming. Users are actually more likely to view an ad to completion on CTV if it is contextually relevant. Contextual targeting helps to drive ad completion, with over half consumers willing to view an ad in full if it's relevant to the content that they're watching. This means more quality impressions and strategic use of your media investment is needed to better connect with your audience versus broad strokes or even a spray and pray approach. So we know that consumer perception surrounding the ad experience is one of the highest items of importance, and contextually relevant ads will be well received. The next thing here is, let's talk about safety. Specifically, let's talk about the importance of content level brand safety in CTV, in addition to other aspects of brand safety. 1 second. So if we want to talk about contextual relevance in CTV, we have to talk about brand safety first in order to get a better understanding of CTV inventory in general. Given the extreme levels of fragmentation that still applies in the CTV landscape, app-level brand safety is still very much perceived as a first step, and we're going to dive into that in just a moment. If you're looking at tomorrow and a little bit of future looking, our second step really is the content level brand safety. But this is a much higher hurdle, because more than anything, it requires multiple links in the chain to make content level information available to the ecosystem. However, much of that information is tied up in legacy carriage agreements that prevent it from being shared broadly. The ultimate goal, if we're looking further into the future, is to be able to actually target specific content based on its relevance and suitability. With all that being said, you might be wondering how app-level brand safety can be tackled today, and it's very similar to how we tackle brand safety in mobile apps today. So let's take a look. So currently, the way we score CTV apps for brand safety is by crawling the corresponding browser version of the CTV App Store to get information about each app, information like the title, the description, and other available metadata. But let me tell you something, it will be a lot easier if all apps had app identifiers. So in order for us to map a CTV app back to its App Store listing, an app identifier must be present. There are a variety of CTV app stores, Roku, Samsung, Google, etc., all have their own, just to name a few. So the IAB Tech Lab released CTV Store assigned app identification guidelines a while back to enable the standardization of app IDs. This being a key first step to bringing standardized measurement to the CTV landscape. Let's go back to last summer where we analyzed 200 campaigns across direct and programmatic supply. We found that almost half the impressions we analyzed did not pass the required app identifier. What does that mean? It means that not only do we have no idea what the app was that ran the ad impression, we certainly have no ability to do any brand safety measurement. A key move right now is to adopt IAB's app identification guidelines in order to provide the verification that many are looking for. And this really is a collective effort, and everyone is limited by our industry's lack of adoption of these standards. We already spoke earlier in the session on how important necessary standardization is to scaling brand safety for CTV, in addition to wider CTV capabilities. But this one is a key challenge and a key one that we face right now. But going back to the analysis of those 200 campaigns that we did last summer, out of the impressions we could analyze, most delivered to large aggregator apps that will most likely pass brand safety thresholds because of their general nature of their app store listing. Though we did see longer tail niche apps that fell into the violence and adult content categories. So let's wrap this up in terms of key takeaways and things for you to think about so we can get into the Q&A session with Diana Romero from PMX Global. Takeaway number one, it's obvious, but it bears repeating because the sooner all players are brought into the idea that CTV will remain on the main stage, the faster we will all be able to rally as an industry to benefit things quicker and have that benefit for all. There's a lot of value in CTV today, but there's a long way to go in terms of measurement. So remember, IAB App Store guidelines. Number two learning from the survey, contextually relevant ads make a real difference to the viewer. By customizing the ad experience for viewers watching, a mutually beneficial relationship happens between advertiser, publisher, and viewer. The advertiser gets their ad seen, the publisher can better monetize their inventory, and the viewer gets to see content that feels relevant to them. Lastly, every single player is going to benefit from standardization. It will take everyone pushing for that in order to make it happen. Again, IAB app identification guidelines are a necessary move in order to provide insight about the apps where ads run and if the app was brand safe. So some specifics you can do right now. If you're an advertiser or an agency, if knowing where your ads ran and app level brand safety is important to you, make sure these media partners enforce these standards. For the DSPs and SSPs, work with your supply partners to help them onboard these standards so they can better package and present their inventory. And last but not least, if you're a publisher, make your premium inventory stand out by ensuring it can be properly identified and showcased. The next step is then getting scalable access to content information for more detailed safety and suitability controls, as this will truly provide a huge amount of value to all, allowing ads to resonate with the content of the video. So that's that whirlwind whistle-stop tour of some insights from our research. But now it's time to speak to someone who can actually give us a perspective on the buy side. So one second, I think we're sharing polling results. No, we're not. Okay, cool. So let's bring on Diana Romero. So we have the pleasure of being joined by Diana Romero. Hi, Diana.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Glenn. Thanks for having me.
Diana, thank you for joining us. How about a quick introduction from yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm part of the Digital Standards and Partnerships team here at Publicis. And we're essentially a central resource that helps and which aim is to help navigate the conversations about brand safety and brand integrity within our agencies, practices, and clients. And that basically encompasses everything from brand safety, brand suitability, to even the verification space, viewability, ad fraud. So the idea is to really sort of centralize the resources and provide education and educational tools and innovation on those key areas.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Diana. I'm gonna start with the most difficult question first, if I may.
Go ahead.
Let me get my notes quickly. Would help. Let's find them. 1 second. Okay, question number one, and this really is the hardest question. I'm sorry. I'd like to start with this one. Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus. Which ones do you have? And if you had to choose one, which would it be?
Yeah, difficult one. Well, I think I have them all actually. So definitely I'm part of the statistics that are really helping the CTV space grows. I really think like being at home and obviously being in a lockdown has really helped and allow us really to sort of like explore the different options out there in terms of content. But I think like if we talk about a favorite one, I think I have to say Disney, just because I do love Disney movies, and actually they have released quite a few good movies recently, and yeah, I'm hooked on Disney right now.
I respect that. I feel like I've binge watched. I've done like repeats of everything. I've done The Office 3 times since last March. But hey ho.
Yeah, exactly. Let me know if you can hear me okay, and if you're because I'm having a few issues with Zoom. But do let me know if you can hear me and see me okay.
I hear you and see you just fine. I'll let you know.
Cool. Thanks.
Because I'm gonna have to fill the space with talk to myself. Okay, so question number two, as we saw from the stats, CTV is one of the fastest growing ad environments. So global advertisers are all working out how they're going to best reach this global consumer base effectively. My question to you is, what challenges do you see when it comes to CTV advertising from your perspective at an agency?
Absolutely. I think from a standards perspective, actually, I think we continue to see the fragmentation of the space as one of the key challenges that obviously we need as an industry, we need to continue to tackle. We really, when we talk about the expansion of the CTV space, and actually when we look at less mature digital markets outside the US and even outside the UK, and you rightly pointed out earlier in your presentation, everyone is defining CTV differently. For some, as you said, is anything to connected TV, connected TV to the internet. For others are smart TVs. So that fragmentation really is kind of like, and the lack of a common definition across the board is allowing for a few gaps to kind of like, even for the ad fraud, for the fraudsters to come in and tackle that lack of commonality in the space. So I think it's definitely one of the key areas that we need to continue to talk about, improve, and come together as an industry to really minimize the vulnerability of the space for sure.
Okay, so you mentioned a couple of different things. So standardization, lack of common definitions,
yes,
exploiting that as well. So fraudsters being able to exploit the lack of definitions and standardization. So if I was to escalate that question, my next question would be, what do you think is the biggest challenge that your team has on this topic?
Yeah, I think definitely from a standards perspective, actually, what we see time and time again, and the conversation around ad fraud across CTV is definitely in the front center of the conversations, even within our practices and our clients. I think we've seen quite a few fraud attacks that have cost a lot of money to everyone quite recently, and we really need to kind of look at that and review how can we tackle that vulnerability. And obviously, like, it is great that the space is growing so fast, and obviously scale is good, so it's a very good news and really good opportunity for everyone. But what we have seen is that that also allows fraudulent parties to really more easily flood the market with falsified impressions. Yes. And as you mentioned it earlier, obviously attractive CPMs, and obviously that, like, the lack of common definitions and measurement, and even like capabilities in terms of verification when we compare the space to this desktop or mobile web, that really just makes the CTV space a system that fraudsters can definitely just easily tackle and take advantage of. So, but actually, I think this is also in a way an opportunity. I think we've seen the likes of IAS and even the industry coming together and working on improving sort of the tools and solutions to really tackle that, and making sure that ultimately clients' campaigns are safe and obviously are being delivered to the right audience.
I got I actually got a part 3 to that question, or a part 2 to that question. I often find with, there's, when you take the 3 topics, viewability, brand safety, fraud, I sometimes find that those, like the top one, or the most detrimental one, or the most a la mode one, it changes, like maybe every sort of 6 to 9 months, 12 months. Like, do you feel the same way, or or is it a question for you? You see ad fraud is number 1, money's being stolen from me, and it's always going to be my number 1 problem. Yeah,
absolutely. I think ultimately the whole point of having digital media is for our clients to really communicate directly to their audiences. And for sure, when you have ad fraudsters really sort of faking the impressions, etc., everyone is losing here. So I think ad fraud is going to continue to be one of the key areas where we really need to kind of like look at it from a technical perspective, and how can we minimize that across the board. Obviously, the CTV space is growing so much, and it's actually really kind of like hot topic, but we've seen ad fraud developing quite quickly every time there is a new medium or a new channel. So I think we're going to have to continue to have those discussions even in the future. Gotcha. But that obviously goes along hand with like overall brand integrity. With at Publicis, we do see being like brand integrity as a whole in terms of brand safety, brand stability, obviously delivering the message to the road users, to the audience. So it encompasses all of those for sure.
Gotcha. Sorry for that 3-parter. Okay, so next question. As viewership continues to rise, industry will need to adapt to support and measure holistic cross-screen advertising. Do you feel, okay, yeah, I'm trying to think of the best way to ask this question without sounding too harsh. Do you feel that the innovation is moving as fast as the viewership numbers? Loaded question, I think.
I mean, I think investment opportunities in the connected TV space will for sure increase. So whether we're ready or adapted enough, I think it's actually something that we just need to continue to adapt and adapt fast.
Sure.
I think the obviously nuanced landscape of CTV can be difficult to navigate, but I think we've seen across the board, and even here within Publicis, we continue to look forward to obviously continue maturing the ecosystem. We're definitely sort of changing our conversation and even our offerings to provide deeper sort of analysis and capabilities, sure, and enhance transparency for our clients. So I think we're all trying to obviously adapt fast to obviously the viewership numbers. So I think, yeah, even though obviously it continues to grow exponentially, I think we're all adapted very quickly. And of course, it depends again, as I mentioned earlier, because some markets might be less digitally mature than others, but I think everyone has that sort of common aim to really drive this and take advantage of the space, of course, and tackle the opportunities that the CTV space brings.
I'm wondering, in your role, how do you level up the playing field in terms of everyone knowing? Is it like, in your role, do you have to create materials as Publicis putting together, like, market-wide information, playbooks, perhaps?
Absolutely, yes. So that's one of like our key, we have 4 kind of pillars where we sort of base our work around brand integrity. So innovation, education, providing tools and solutions. And I think one of the key areas that we see there is really need for everyone really is the education side of things. And we tried to sort of like, we continue to improve all our resources internally provide obviously all the information in this ever-changing space. And we definitely work very closely with you guys, with all the verification vendors and even the tech partners to really understand how can we better provide efficiencies to our clients. And obviously that comes with the education side as well. Gotcha.
Next question. How do you think we're doing as an industry? What are the latest industries that we should all be aware of and things that we should adopt within our companies? Some highlights from your perspective.
I think as an industry, we're definitely moving in the right direction. I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think we see the measurement and the verification partners such as IAS doing a really tremendous work in ramping up solutions and capabilities across the CTV space, and that's in the space of over a year. So we're definitely excited to see that evolution and how will that actually impact and will help mitigate some of those critical challenges across the industry for 2021. I think, as I mentioned earlier as well, I think we do also see agencies adapt to this rapid growth. Here at Publicis, we continue to really work on providing, obviously, those best class solutions to our clients, and ultimately enhance and better support obviously the conversations around scale, pricing, inventory quality, and ease of activation around the CTV marketplace. And I definitely also see improvements in terms of attribution and cross-media measurement. And obviously that's tied up to my first point, but that might help remedy the fragmentation of the space. And obviously, with more education across the industry, and obviously everyone coming together, I think we're going to continue to see a really good outcomes for 2021 in the space for sure.
Okay, so speaking about good things you want to see, this is a question type of, sorry, this is a type of question that you can do a hot take, right? So, what 3 things you want to see to improve the CTV advertising offering? The 3 wants.
Yeah, for sure. I think obviously, and not to sound repetitive, but I think tackling that fragmentation will definitely help, drive the space even like further, and I will continue to support that growth across markets. I think obviously the lack of the common definitions, etc., and measurement as well, it can actually be very detrimental if we're really not talking about that as an industry, and if we're not coming together as an industry.
Sure.
I think in a way and that's why we actually here at Publicis and from a digital standards perspective, we're very involved with industry groups and obviously in the conversations about how can we really have that agency and oversight about enforcing maybe the approach to CTV and the standard measurement and obviously the common definitions. So how can we have that support from regulatory, sorry, I cannot say the word.
I know. Regulatory?
Help us with that.
I don't know.
So yeah, just basically, as we have seen with GDPR, obviously we have governments, etc., trying to enforce that. So how are we doing that with maybe newer channels and obviously CTV? How is it going to look like in a few years' time as well, when obviously that growth continues to happen? And of course, I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think another key thing for us is we definitely like to continue to see the offerings in terms of what the verification vendors are doing in the space. We're very excited about all the kind of conversations that we're having with our clients. Our clients are very tech savvy right now about the space, and they're asking questions, and it is really good to see that the likes of IAS and obviously the verification vendors, what they're doing in terms of actually mitigating some of those key challenges, especially around ad fraud and measurement.
Gotcha. Final question before we go to the audience questions. And actually, before we go into that final question, I picked up a couple of different things: standardization, making sure there's you're addressing the fragmentation. I think there's yeah, I'm always interested to see companies who are trying to do things that impact everyone, rather than trying to do things which only benefits them. And it's you know, that's, I think, you know, even when you start talking about things like whether it's viewability, whether it's brand safety, you know, when you talk about topics like identity, you know, I'm very interested in companies that are doing, hey, this is for everyone. So I think, you know, that speaks to, you know, the fragmentation, also standardization elements. So last question of this this one-to-one Q&A before we move on to audience questions. I think we've got a few. What is the number one thing you'd like the industry to stop doing? And I think I've asked you this question in the past before, so I'm happy to ask you again. Let's see if it's changed.
No, I think we continue to see. I think obviously, you know, the ad fraud attacks are coming again, very strong. And when we talk about ad fraud attacks on CTV, obviously that brings the attention and the light to not only technical vulnerabilities, but obviously it makes everyone and even our own clients question the security of the space, and it could create some scaremongering. So I think we need to really, this only reaffirms the need to unify industry approaches to tackle fraud in CTV, and obviously come together as an industry to really streamline that and making sure that we're providing our clients and even internally to our own agencies the right kind of like tools to navigate those conversations, and making sure that we're on top of this, and obviously ultimately helping reduce those fraud attacks as well. So
Sure.
I think that's kind of like one of the things that we continue to see, but we like to kind of like have a different approach for 2021 as an industry, perhaps stop kind of like the scaremongering around ad fraud, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's like an easy one to you can place a lot of fear against it, and like, you know, we should be concerned about it, and, you know, and think about the detrimental loss of cash. You know, someone stealing money from you. And then, that's step one. And step two could be your ad could be going somewhere that you definitely don't want it to be. So there's accountability factor, but there's also, you know, someone stealing my money. I think those are two big things. Yeah, the idea of, you know, using as the scaremongering tactic. I think that's, you know, we've been doing that for a long time, right? The industry's been doing that for a long time. Let's pick up this thing and let's, you know, let's paint it at a certain picture. But yeah, okay, cool. Diana Romero, as always, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Great to chat to you guys.
I think we've got Lauren back in the call, and we're going to go through some audience questions.
Yes, thank you guys. That was really insightful. Really enjoyed listening to you guys there. Thank you so much. Yes, we've had a few questions come through. The Q&A box is still live, so if anyone does have any other questions, please do add them to the box, and we will get to as many of them as we can. So the first question, I think perhaps both of you can answer, but up to you who wants to answer this one. So how do you think CTV compares to other video sources? Should brands be replacing outstream video, for example, with CTV on their plans?
I'm happy to go first, Diana, if you like. Let's see. Okay, so how do you think CTV compares? I'll start with the second question. So should brands be replacing outstream video, for example, with CTV on their plans? Perhaps. You know, what is it you're looking to do? What is it you're looking to achieve? For starters, I was looking from the point of view of what you get from each medium, also what you pay for at the same right. So two very, very different experiences. So I would sit on the side of caution in terms of, you know, yes, it looks good to be on a big screen and make use of that CTV app, but, you know, are you trying to do an apples for apples, or are you looking to extend reach across, you know, from your linear TV buying? So again, it comes down to goals and reasons why, and what you lose versus what you gain. But yeah, I mean, I remember times when I worked at previous companies doing supply planning for video across, you know, an agency holding group. All those sources were useful. They had a reason to be on the plan. So I guess it's understanding why you'd use one over the other, and why you buy. I think I've answered the question in the same respect, but, you know, I'll hand it over to Diana if she has an opinion as well.
I think we need to have the conversation, and really when you compare video, normal video buys with CTV, I think right now what we need to really have is a conversation about how can we just the two of them come in tandem and obviously better align in terms of goals and objectives and KPIs to really provide obviously our clients with obviously the ultimate their ultimate achieve that ultimate goal that they have across different campaigns. So I think it's definitely just right now having that looking at the best of both worlds and really just providing that ultimate sort of like synergy to really achieve those main KPIs for our clients. But I think as we've mentioned with Glenn in our conversation, I think like because the space is going to grow and continue to grow, and it's kind of like even for 2023 in the US is going to be kind of like the main medium that everyone is going to kind of like advertise on. I think for sure those conversations might change over the year, and that depends in terms of how mature and how quickly we adapt to those changes, and how can we tackle things like ad fraud and making sure that we're actually providing that really the right solutions for our clients. So yeah, for sure, I think right now is providing that synergy, but for sure that might change in a few months and over the course of the year. So we're really excited to see how we as an industry will adapt, and how are we going to come together to tackle that, to really provide a great opportunity for everyone and our clients in terms of actually reaching audiences and providing those KPIs.
Great, and I think actually this sort of ties in slightly, but someone else has asked, what is the added value of CTV compared to linear TV? Anyone wants to take that one?
I'll have Diana, you go.
I think for sure, obviously the CTV space really helps you in terms of actually planning and buying. You can have that again, that synergy and that interconnection, and that with other channels. You can reach your audience easily. You have so many kind of good opportunities to really have that reach your desired audiences, and obviously have that real engagement with your customers and with your audiences. I think linear TV, although it's still quite strong and quite big, the user behavior is changing for sure, and users are migrating to streaming devices, and they're definitely checking they're doing cross screen while watching content. So we do need to pay attention to that, and we do need to pay attention how users and consumers are utilizing and viewing content ultimately. So I think it's a great opportunity, and that's a kind of like a really good advantage over linear TV, and I think it's definitely a space to pay attention to.
Great. Did you have anything you wanted to add there, Glenn, or we can?
Sorry, remind me the question again. Sorry, forgive me.
Oh, it was, what's the added value of CTV compared to linear TV?
I mean, so you can look at, let's take 2 points of view. So if you're a TV buyer, extending your reach and having a channel which is complementary to what you're doing on your linear, that's a huge part. But then you also think about it from a point of view of what you get from each one. So in the CTV arena, should we say, or that device, the level of digital metrics that you're used to is greater than what a TV planner is used to. But then if you look from a TV planner's point of view, you may not get what you're used to as well. So everything from like age and gender and a standard issue audience metrics you usually get from TV, you won't be getting that. But those two should be able to work hand in hand and also provide a level up. So there's one thing that we've thought about for a very, very long time. This is, this predates, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. There's that convergence has been happening for a long time, and we're really at that point where the convergence is well and truly underway. But it's, for TV buyers, I'd love to see how TV buyers can adopt and understand how digital metrics work. And I'd love to see how digital folks can understand how TV buying and TV metrics can work. And so you see some very interesting companies now who are enabling that audience measurement and adding that on top of digital metrics. So that to me is a real convergence. Rather than just saying, cool, I want to be able to buy everything under one roof. You can almost do that these days, but rather than anything, I want to be able to measure and score interchangeably with those two different lenses. So it's a question of how can digital buyers become a little more TV savvy, and how can TV buyers can be a little more digital savvy. And I see the next evolution of verification and measurement. Those two things come together. Maybe not including exposure, because that's another rabbit hole we can go down. We can talk for hours about exposure and identity, something that I'd like to do on not necessarily right now. But I think those two worlds are complementary, and they really should be thinking of each other. And you see companies who have hybrid teams of buying now, and you do see teams who don't silo their TV buying. But there are still some companies that still do, which is interesting. So that's added value is definitely the added value is two-way.
Yeah.
And you can really not exploit, but you can make use of both in harmony.
Great. And I think this perhaps one's for you as well, Glenn. Obviously, I'm sure Diana's got some good insight for this as well. So you talked about in your presentation about how the ads were resonating with people when they were in context. Do either of you have any insight into what kind of creatives resonate or perhaps perform best when it comes to CTV?
So I can give you some top line ones for starters, like, duration is a big one. But I don't necessarily want to let the cat out of the bag. I'd love for people to download the study and find more. But also, it's worth understanding that it differs by sector, differs by vertical, differs by client size and client type. So, but there's on the next slide I'm going to show there is a QR code which you can hold your phone up and zap that and get that study to see. But yeah, there's some interesting stuff in there, and obviously chat with their agencies, and also chat with the folks on our side as well, so what you can garner from that information. But yeah.
Great. Diana, did you have anything you want to add there, or?
No, I think definitely contextual. The contextual conversation is also kind of like very key, not only to really provide that right message to our audiences, but in the context of brand safety as well. I think like we've seen conversations about how can you our clients better really mitigate the risk across brand safety, or even when talking about like the risk tolerance that some of our clients might have. I think contextually is very important for everyone to understand that really is kind of like one of the areas that our clients need to tackle and need to really sort of understand and provide that right messaging, and obviously minimize kind of like those incidents that we've seen time and time again in terms of brand safety. So I think contextual is going to continue to be a very big conversation for 2021 for sure.
Yeah, definitely, I agree. So we've got a couple more questions I think we've got time for. So this one here is, what are the things that advertisers should keep in mind when advertising with CTV in Europe versus the US?
Are we talking about GDPR? Let's not talk about GDPR.
Actually, it says apart from the obvious GDPR. So
okay, thank goodness.
We can keep that one to one side.
I would look at it from an infrastructure point of view. This is one lens. If you look at, this is quite uniform across most things, but the US is leading the pack in terms of innovation and deployment and readiness. If you look at the differences in terms of how content and also ads are delivered, so that infrastructure. If you look at US versus UK, there's not a huge amount of change. But then when you look at UK versus France, France versus Germany, Germany versus Italy, those are as different as their cuisines are. When you start thinking about IPTV and also HBBTV, which is a specification that I imagine is going to take far more prominence moving forward. But you look at those differences; those are stark differences in terms of how things actually run and how you'd have to consider server-side ad insertion, how you deploy and how you measure. That's the main thing. US is leaps and bounds ahead, but because their industry, their one market is very, very uniform. And I read recently that obviously applies to the wider North America, but also I think that applies to Australia as well. But when you take that, you look at it from a US versus UK, UK versus France, et cetera, like the comparison I made just now, very different. And I don't know what's gonna. I couldn't predict what's gonna happen in terms of what's the one that's going to be the uniform view across the board. But there should really be steps to let's say leveling the access to that playing field. The fact that we have one way of doing things in country X versus country Y. If you're a big global brand or a big agency that works globally, you don't want stark differences. So. So I think there's a leveling of the playing field that I think needs to happen in terms of also access to the playing field.
Yes.
And keep in mind that US is leading the pack because it's uniform, and Europe will continue to have to keep figuring out, how do we make these differences workable? Long answer, sorry.
Absolutely, and yeah, we're definitely doing a lot of work this year at IAB Europe on kind of creating those sort of standard definitions.
Yeah, you guys are
across the board for the European market. So definitely keep your eyes out for that as well.
It's on you guys, eh?
Yes.
Lucky you.
And great. If we have just one more question, so we've got, as you also mentioned in your presentation, that CTV is here to stay. And we've talked a lot about ways we can encourage growth and adoption. Maybe this is one for each of you to answer. So what's the one thing that the market needs to do to get to the next level?
Diana, you first.
I'm going to sound very repetitive, but definitely the sort of that clearly sort of have that set of definitions and standardize the language when we're talking about CTV. I think again that fragmentation in terms of having different sort of approaches when you look at the space really allows for those gaps and obviously things like ad fraud really is taking advantage of this. So we need to really come together as an industry and making sure, and you as you mentioned it, Lauren, like even with the IABs and even the US leading the pack, how we actually making true global solutions to tackle this lack of standardized terminology, and obviously the lack of obviously standardized measurement as well. And another thing, I think we need to really continue to educate the markets. I think, as Glenn mentioned it just now, I think it's important to understand that when you have global brands and obviously you as an agency even, you do really activate globally. Different markets have different levels of digital maturity. So we need to continue to drive that education, and we need to continue to drive the conversations, even here in Europe, about how we making sure that everyone and level that playing field, and obviously making sure that we're making the right investments in terms of not even just technical investment and obviously developing the products, but also the talent and how well educated they are as well. And that's what we're trying to do here from a central resource at Publicis, to provide that education and the tools for everyone to have that support when they go to market and talk to the partners, to the clients. So yeah, I think those two things are kind of like key.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm all in on Diana's point about standardization and addressing that fragmentation. In my mind, it's really a question of when it comes to working with others or taking on a new vendor or building. It's like what, I think GDPR has this as and I hate to reference GDPR in the actual document itself, but it says like you have to be designing with a privacy first mindset. Is privacy in your blood and your DNA in terms of when you operate with others, when you build, you sign contracts, blah, blah, blah. I think thinking of interoperability as a key part of your DNA. So when you're building, when you're looking to partner with other companies, is it a solution which is going to benefit the many? If it's an exclusive and it's only going to work with one vendor, how do you scale that? So when it comes to the measurement side of things, are you working with vendors? Are you working with suppliers who are trying to benefit the masses? It sounds quite ominous and quite hopeful, but I think it's a real key thing. It's like, we need to level the playing field. So you look at, whatever's happening in the identity world right now. People are looking to build, a pretty much open source. If it works with me, it works with you. Let's do it. And it works with, everyone down the line. So I'd say that's a key one right now. It's like, if you're, whatever you're building, whatever you're looking to innovate with, make sure it works with more than just one. But that's all I got. Diana, yeah, on point with Diana's.
Brilliant. Well, thank you both. This has been a really interesting session. I really appreciate your time going through all of this. We did also have a question about whether the presentation would be shared. So what we'll be doing is we'll follow up with everyone that's attended today, just with a copy of the recording, but we can also obviously share the report that you can scan here with you guys, and a copy of the slides available for you. So, but again, yes, thank you both for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we hope that everyone enjoys the rest of the day.
Thanks, Diana. Thanks, IAB.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.